Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're looking at F-15 Strike Eagle 2 from MicroProse software. This was first released in 1989 for MS-DOS PC, but it was followed up by ST and Amiga versions which had additional content. The PC version subsequently had this additional content included through an expansion pack, so eventually they had full content parity, although the PC version was done across two separate releases. So this game was built on the work that MicroProse had done on F-15 Stealth Fighter previously, which was one of their more successful games, and one that I used to own but haven't been able to find my old copy of for some reason, which is a bit of a shame. Like its predecessor, it sort of combined a feeling of accessibility with a lot of depth. Although F-15 Strike Eagle, much like its original incarnation on the 8-bit computers and later on the Atari ST as well, was designed to be a bit more accessible and immediate and almost arcadey. And in fact, there was an arcade release of this game. In the arcades, it was just called F-15 Strike Eagle rather than F-15 Strike Eagle 2. But it was basically the same game, but running on more powerful hardware than was available for home computers at the time. And it had an interesting credit system, so every coin you put in, it gave you a little bit more fuel. So basically the more coins you put in, the longer you could play for. It wasn't so much about skill and surviving, it was just purely a time limit for how long you got to play, really. So I do want to take a look at the packaging for this, because when I lament the apparent impending doom of physical releases of computer and video games, this sort of thing is what I'm thinking about. MicroProse games were always absolutely beautifully packaged. So here we've got the front cover with some nice artwork. On the back, we've got a bit of blurb and some screenshots talking about the game. This is one of many games from the period that was kind of released in one of these nice slip cases. So the cover could come off, and inside we have this fairly plain but quite classy sort of black box that contained all the goodies inside. Pop that there for now. So inside we have got a reference card specifically for the ST and Amiga version here. So the PC version would have had slightly different key commands. We got a reference guide to the head-up display in your craft as well. Because there's so many keyboard controls in your average flight sim from the period, this sort of thing was essential to have on hand at the time. And in fact, there were even companies out there who kind of made their living from making keyboard overlays, so actual cardboard things that you could put over the top of your Atari ST keyboard that almost labelled the keys for you. So I think we had one for F-15, but that seems to have disappeared somewhere. So other things we've got a technical supplement, and this would have been unique to each individual platform. It provides things like loading instructions, information about copy protection, graphical detail, and all that sort of thing. So depending on which version of the game you bought, you would have got things, and it goes into a surprising amount of detail, such as what colours represent what in the game and so on. So those minor differences between platforms would have all been covered in there. Now, here's the real star of the show. This is a MicroProse manual. And when I say I miss manuals in modern games, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. This is a huge glossy manual, 136 pages. And MicroProse manuals are always a real highlight because they were almost designed like coffee table books. So as well as having information about the game itself and how to play it, they also included things like technical information and guides to aerobatics and sort of dogfighting tactics. The back portion of this guide also contains kind of a rundown of each of the available war theatres that you can fly missions in this game as well. So it's a really interesting read. Great for taking to the toilet. There's also quite an interesting introduction. I'm not sure exactly who it's written by because it doesn't say, but it does have a few interesting bits in here that I just want to read a couple of little bits from. Bearing in mind the time period that this was released in, 1989 to 1990. So, just as MicroProse has developed and changed, so has world politics. The Cold War appears to be melting. and the Soviet Union struggles to throw off the shackles of communism in search of the light of democracy. Now, this was quite an interesting thing because in F-15 Stealth Fighter, which came out previously to this, there was actually a setting where you could choose what kind of war you were fighting in. So you could have a conventional war, in which case you could pretty much just bomb the shit out of anything that was red on your radar. But you could also change that all the way over to the Cold War setting, which placed a lot more limitations on you. So you were only allowed to attack certain targets. You could sort of fail the mission if you were flying in the wrong areas or if you got spotted. And that was a really sort of good complement to the stealth-based gameplay of F-19 Stealth Fighter. F-15 kind of abandons all that and assumes that a state of conventional war exists at all times. But yeah, that was how the Cold War was made relevant to MicroProse stuff. For the past 7 months, the Persian Gulf has been the centre of world attention since the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein entered and took the tiny Arab state of Kuwait. Despite diplomatic efforts to remove him from his illegal occupation, during which time he murdered Kuwait's people and pillaged her resources, he was still refusing to comply with United Nations Security Council resolutions on January 15, 1991, the deadline set for his unconditional withdrawal. And then it goes on a bit to talk about the history leading up to the Gulf War. And I found this quite interesting because I don't feel like any games today really make a lot of reference to real world things like that. Some of them might say that they have stories ripped from the headlines or based on reality or whatever, but this manual is really interesting in that it's calling direct attention to sort of actual world events that were happening at the time of release. And I don't really want to say it's propaganda because, I mean, everyone knows that Saddam Hussein was doing bad things at the time. But yeah, just the tone of it is quite surprising to read from a modern perspective. Excuse me itching my nose. I do have a itchy nose today. Yeah, so it continues. We've been highlighting the Persian Gulf and Middle East as potential trouble spots for the whole 6 years since the original F-15 Strike Eagle. It is true that Iraq is not seen as the greatest regional threat in the simulation. We've taken the decision not to attempt to simulate the particular events of the last 7 months. For many people, it would be too painful, too close. So, although there is a Persian Gulf theatre in F-15 Strike Eagle 2, so you can sort of pretend you're fighting in the Gulf War, it doesn't sort of directly position Iraq as the aggressors. It's just a sort of general Persian Gulf setting. So, that's all quite interesting. What else have we got in here? So, dropping everything. So we've got some floppy disks. This game came on 2 disks. The first one was just the game, so you'd boot up from that one, and then you'd load up the scenario disk to actually load in the various theatres. In here we've also got, well, I've also got, I should say, a few additional disks. So we've got some backup copies of those, as at the time it was often recommended that you take backup copies of your disks in case anything happens to your originals. And then we've also got this, which is my roster disk. And you can see that I've obviously tried to decorate that and make it look cool at some point, but not really succeeded in that. And the final thing we got in here, we've got some maps of the various theatres. So here we've got the Persian Gulf and Vietnam on this one. And then we've got Libya on this one. And the Middle East. Interestingly, the 2 additional scenarios that were added for the ST and Amiga versions don't seem to have those maps, which is a little odd. But the one nice thing about those maps is the bit at the back of the manual I showed you before that had the information about the various theatres. They make reference to those maps, so they give you grid references that you can look up on those maps, so you can see where all the key points of interest and air bases and potential targets are. So yeah, it's a really coherent package that all ties together really nicely, and it's something I really missed from the time period. But anyway, that's probably enough rambling on about F-15 Strike Eagle 2's physical packaging. Let's go and actually play it, shall we? Okay, here we are with F-15 Strike Eagle 2 by MicroProse. This version released in 1991. So, to begin, we have to select our control method. So, let's go with joystick, because that makes the most sense. And as always, when you see sort of glitchy backgrounds going on, like this, it's because I'm running a version off a pirated disc rather than the original that you saw in the introduction. The reason for that is it just minimises disc swapping, but in the case of F-15 2, you still have to have a roster disc on hand to save your games on. Don't know if we can actually just... We can get started, that's fine. Okay, so here we go. So this is the Hall of Fame. These are people who have previously played the game, mostly from the staff. You can, I think... Oh no, you can't choose them, because if you look at the first icon on each of the... on each of those things, there you can see that some of them are shown as a guy working at a desk, which means that they bailed out too many times and got relegated to a desk job. And then these ones here, the RIP logo means that they were killed. So, Second Lieutenant, you start here. There we go. So, we have a selection of different difficulty levels. So you can play all the way up to Ace. And apparently, getting better at the game causes your moustache to grow and for you to get older. So we'll just play on Rookie for now, because it's been, like most things on this series, it's been a good 30 years since I played this seriously, but I've been really looking forward to revisiting this. So, let's go for Rookie. Okay, so you select a theatre in which you would like to play. So the easiest one is Libya. Then we have the Persian Gulf, which absolutely has nothing to do with Operation Desert Storm, honest. We have Vietnam, Central Europe, the North Cape, and the Middle East. So we'll start with Libya, because that's where you'd start playing the game in most cases. Okay, so our mission today: take off from the airbase at Sigonella, and that ONC UD-15. That refers to those maps that are in the box, so you can actually see where they are on the map if you have those to hand. Our primary objective is an oil rig at ONC VB-48, and a secondary objective is a camp at Tripoli. So, off we go. So you start in the air, much like in the original F-15 Strike Eagle. You start directly behind someone that you're ready to shoot, basically. Just so you can immediately get a kill and have a bit of fun there. Okay, so basically the way this works is you follow your waypoint, which is the red marker on your head-up display up there. And make your way to your target. Preferably blasting some things along the way. And like the original F-15 Strike Eagle, you have various ways of dealing with enemies. So you have your Vulcan cannon, and the way the gun sight works in this is that it's called a historical gun sight. So rather than placing that over the enemy you want to hit, as in something like the Ace Combat series, what you have to do in this instance is kind of lead your target. The reason it's called a historical gun sight is because it shows where your shots would have landed if you'd fire them 2 seconds ago. Which might sound like a strange way of doing things, but yeah, that is apparently a more accurate way of judging how to fire things. So, as you'll see as we're flying around, you'll see targets appearing on the radar in the middle. You can attack those if you want to. You don't have to. In fact, on rookie level, they don't do a great deal to fight back. So this is a good opportunity to demonstrate what we're doing. And so you switch between your various different weapons using the key controls. So G for air to ground, G for air to ground, M for medium range missiles, S for short range missiles. And basically, you set course for your targets, blow them up, and take it from there. So these little sort of expanding markers that you see occasionally, those are radars that are attempting to lock onto you. So on the harder difficulty levels, those are kind of the areas that you'd want to avoid, because they'd probably end up launching surface-to-air missiles or SAMs at you. Again, since we're playing on the rookie difficulty, you probably don't have to worry about that too much. So, while we're flying to our next destination, let's just tap on some of the function keys we've got here to have a look at some of the external views we've got. So, F1 lets you look out the front of your plane. F2 and F3 let you look out the sides. F4 is look out the back. F5 is called the slot view. And what this does is this basically keeps the camera in the same orientation and just allows you to view your plane. And so it lets you get a good feel for like its pitch and roll angle and so on. F6 is the chase plane. So what this does is this follows what your plane is doing just a brief moment afterwards. So that can be quite a dramatic view, but the manual specifically points out... Oh, hello, we're being shot at. Ah! Missile warning. I've actually forgotten the key to get back to the normal cockpit view. Anyway, as I was saying. So then we have the side view, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then we have, I think this is the tactical view, but since we don't have a target in it... Oh yeah, there we go. So the tactical views allow you to keep your plane and your target looking at each other. So this can be good for judging if you're facing the right direction and all that sort of thing. So if I wanted to take aim for this target at Misrata down there, then yeah, I would just point in that direction using the tactical view. That's the reverse tactical view, which shows you your target always looking at your plane. So that can make for some quite dramatic shots. Oh, and I pressed the escape key, which caused me to bail out of my aircraft. That was not the right thing to do. I apologise. But this does give me a good opportunity to go and look up what the key command to get back to the normal cockpit view is. So, if you will bear with me a moment, we will start again in a moment with a full knowledge of what I should actually be doing. So, I'll be right back. Okay, you rejoin us with me having remembered what the actual controls are. So I scored 825 points for that first mission, despite bailing out completely unnecessarily, and they didn't fire me, so that's good. You don't want to do that too many times, though, because otherwise you end up with one of those desk job icons and you won't be able to continue playing with that character. So let's have another go. Let's bump it up to pilot difficulty this time, and let's try... let's go for Vietnam. Okay, so this time around, we have to take off from the USS Kitty Hawk, blow up a tank farm, and destroy a surface-to-air missile. Alright, sounds good to me. Let's go.
Strike Eagle, cleared for takeoff.
Okay, so we're on a harder difficulty now. So this time we have to actually take off. Which is exciting. And here we go. I got it. Oh, whoops. Stalling. I should build up a bit of speed before getting into a tight turn like that. I've got to say, this game runs a lot smoother than I remember it running. If you've seen some of the previous 3D games that we've seen on this series up until this point, you're probably quite used to fairly low frame rates. But I'm pretty impressed with this so far. This is running very smoothly for an ST game anyway. Okay. That's a MiG down that we don't have to worry about. Let us set course for our primary target. Oh, we're being shot at already. Does that mean it might be an idea to set course for whatever is shooting at? Or is that the missile coming in? And there's Dong Hoi over there. Get away from me! Ouch! Didn't really have time to respond there. Yeah, as you can see, there's already quite a jump in difficulty from rookie to pilot. There we go. We outturned that. Oh no, it's coming back. Okay, let's just try and get out of range of this SAM site. Because frankly, it's just causing us grief. What I will do is I'll decrease my altitude. Oh, we've been shot at by a MiG as well. We can certainly deal with him because he's quite close. Die! Victory is mine. And you can have some as well. When you're close enough. Didn't even see the missile that time. He just fired out and point blanked him. So this is where the sort of arcadey feel of the game comes from, is that you're pretty much straight into combat. The combat is very immediate and quick. It's a lot of firing missiles and sort of immediately taking out your targets. So quite an accurate simulation of modern air war. In that you almost don't see your targets before you kill them. In a lot of cases. So not a lot of close range gun battles. But they can still happen. As you saw in our first attempt. Yeah, absolutely plenty of opportunity to shoot things down with your cannons if you so desire. Okay, there's our primary target. So we just need to get close enough to fire off our Mavericks. Yeah, like I said, I've been really looking forward to returning to this game because I spent a lot of time playing it as a kid. This and F-15 Stealth Fighter were some real favourites of mine, just because I enjoyed how accessible they were, but they had enough realism about them to keep them interesting and exciting. Obviously, the limitations of the technology at the time meant that they couldn't be like super realistic. But you had to think about enough things while you were playing that it kind of felt like you were flying a real plane. And there was enough detail in the scenery to be reasonably convincing. So, like, you got the roads and you got the fields and the various pattern bits and the mountains and so on. So, obviously, it's not a patch on modern flight simulators. But there's more than enough detail there to provide a convincing experience for the time period. And as I say, this is running a lot more smoothly than I remember. So much so that I'm actually very impressed with this. So if you remember the original F-15 Strike Eagle we looked at, even on the Atari ST version, you tap the joystick and you turn by a whole 10 degrees of roll at a time. Whereas in this one, I tap it and you turn just a tiny bit. Uh-oh. Being shot at again. We've also got some MiGs incoming as well. Let's keep down a bit. We are flying at 5,000 feet, so we can probably be seen quite easily. Oh, coming up behind us. Get away! Yeah. Alright, let's try and shoot down these planes, because they're going to cause trouble before long. Although they're a bit close for my liking. Oh, there's one. Heave it round. Oh no, that's the missile. Where? Oh, we're out of medium range missiles. Well, that sucks. And that message I just got about director mode. In fact, I will turn that on. Because this is quite an interesting thing if it works as intended. So there's our target, or the MiG anyway. Let's target that other one because he's a bit further away. Hopefully. And what director mode does is it automatically switches the camera angles to show things like aircraft taking off and missiles firing and all that sort of thing. So if you, in fact, the manual specifically recommends against using it for attempting to play the game, but if you're showing it off to friends, then you may well want to make use of it to sort of show off the fancy 3D graphics. Oh, I didn't kill him. Right, let's turn that off because it's quite distracting. Yeah, one thing you will notice with this game compared to more realistic simulations, and in fact even compared to Ace Combat on the consoles, is that turning it kind of automatically takes care of the rudder for you. So if you play something like Ace Combat, and you roll to the side, then you'll just roll. You won't turn. Because in a real aircraft, in order to turn, you need to both roll and use the rudders. Whereas what we have here is a simulation of a system where the two are linked together. So you don't have to worry about having separate controls for roll and yaw. Come here. Yes. Right. I should get a nice chunk of points for all this now. With all the enemies we have dispatched. We are out of air-to-air missiles now, though, so we can't really take on any more dogfights. So let's drop the altitude a bit. And try and be a bit more discreet. Alright, our target is up ahead. We've got 3 air-to-ground missiles. No, no! Missed. You suck. And our secondary target is just ahead, so if we can go and deal with that, that will take care of our mission. Missed. Alright, nicely done. So now return to base. And try not to get shot in the process. You know what? Let's hit the afterburners. And blast our speed up. So speed is over on the left side of the... Oh no! No, 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 get away. Yeah, the only trouble with afterburners is, 1, they use a lot more fuel, and 2, they make you more visible, because obviously you're blasting a bunch of flames out the back of your aircraft, which makes infrared missiles much more likely to be able to lock onto you. Although these MiGs are a terrible shot from the look of things, so don't have to worry too much about that. So again, let's drop altitude a bit. The only real trouble with this sort of these sort of flat shaded polygons for a flight sim is that it can be a little bit difficult to judge how close to the ground you are. So you have to really make sure you trust that altimeter over on the right hand side of the head-up display. Okay, so I've put on the automatic pilot here. And this should hopefully land for us, I believe. Because I'm not sure I trust myself to land this, because it's been a very long time, so we may as well see how it's done properly. So the autopilot in this game, it will do several things for you. So it will take off and land for you. It will get you to your next waypoint. It obviously won't do the fighting for you, so you still have to do that. But yeah, so the most helpful things it does are take off and land and navigate for you. There's also an accelerate time function as well. So if, for example, you've got a long way to go to your target, and there's not a lot of hazards in the way, like SAM sites or MiGs flying for you, then you can accelerate time. There's also a training mode you can activate, where you can restock your weapons with the touch of a button. And you can also use a function called slew, which allows you to basically teleport your plane in any direction. So if you just want to have a look around the map and see what scenery features there are, then yeah, you can engage the training mode and use a slew function to directly put yourself anywhere in the map. But obviously, as the word training suggests, if you do that, then you won't get any points for the mission, because you cheated, basically. It's like a built-in cheat mode. That's a very hard landing, automatic pilot. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have been worried. Maybe I shouldn't have been worried about that. I should have just slammed it down. Okay, so that is mission complete, because we shot down our primary and secondary targets, and got a few other things in the process. So, at the end of a mission, you can go review mission, and it will take you through the various events that took place with these cool little pixel art things, showing you what happened when and your cumulative score as a result of your actions. And there we go. And it will give you a summary of what you shot in the process. So we destroyed 2 objective ground targets, we destroyed 2 other targets, and no friendly targets, which is the correct thing to do. Okay, so we then exit debriefing. For your consistently successful missions, you've been promoted to First Lieutenant. Yes, that first mission was really successful. I'm sure you're delighted that I ejected from a plane that was not under attack by anyone. For your outstanding performance, you received the Distinguished Flying Cross. So yeah, you also get medals in this if you get a particularly good score in a single mission, and for various other circumstances as well. Okay, so there we go. That is F-15 Strike Eagle 2 from MicroProse. Probably a game I'm going to revisit a bit, because I really enjoyed that. So, yeah, kind of flight sims of this style are kind of a bit of a lost art these days, so it's nice to revisit them and see how things used to be. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.